Here today we have Rob Lazar, CEO of the company I work with, Remax Select. Rob, tell us who you are, where you're from, and how'd you get started in real estate?
All right. I'm Rob Lazar, as you mentioned. I'm a New Jersey native, grew up in Edison and now live in Westfield. Um, I think I was predisposed to be an entrepreneur from a young age. Had businesses in elementary and junior high and high school. And as soon as I graduated from high school, I bought a two-family house for the passive income. So that's where my mindset was growing up. And if you have some time, I'll even share with you how I was inspired or motivated to get into real estate.
Well, that's what we're here for. And I guess before we jump into that, what inspired you to get into real estate? I'm curious, what were your businesses from elementary to middle school and high school and all that?
I did some like property management, for people who were absentee. And then my parents kidnapped me and took me down to Beach Haven West, which is a beautiful place, but I was taken away from all my friends here. So my brother and I, we decided to operate a clamming business, catching these, clams you eat on the half shell.
So,
And I was in I was in fifth grade. My brother was in sixth. We didn't drive. We had a boat and we sold the clams on the water.
incredible. Incredible. Always solving problems. That's what you were doing,
Yeah.
essentially at a young age. So then what inspired you to get into real estate?
So going back to the same place, my parents were not college educated. They were hardworking. They decided to buy a place for us to go in the weekends and summer instead of going on vacation. So they made a sacrifice. And while the house was being built, Joe, I watched it go from 58,000 in 1980 to nearly 72,000, 74,000 in 1981 when we moved in. And I was like, wow, like if you bought one when I first went down there, you can make a ton of money. So I had the real estate bug, and mind you, I think I was in fourth or fifth grade. I would go down there with my parents, and we would drive down to the house and see how much construction was done. But I'd be checking the price sheet, and I'd also be looking at the sales board at like how many pins were put in this week, right?
Okay.
So that's how I was. I guess that's what programmed me into believing in real estate. And now I'm as passionate about that, Joe, because I think a lot of possibly even your generation, some people grew up where their parents lost their house due to the great economic crisis, and probably doesn't have a very favorable opinion on real estate.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess I'm curious then. We talked a little bit before. You're a broker, but you never sold the house. So how does that even happen? Because now you're the CEO of how many Remaxes do you own?
Um, we have I have 44 or 45 now, and I have 14 closing this month.
Inc
Two transactions.
Incredible. So that if that puts you anywhere between around 60, right? Or am I
Yeah,
wrong?
58.
58.
And
Okay.
it'll be over 1,000 agents.
So how did you come across buying your first franchise?
Um, all right, so I got to take a step back. So I went to when I went to college, I wanted to be in accounting because I thought that was exciting, and I'm a numbers person, right? When I did an internship, I discovered that I didn't like it, and I went back to grad school. In grad school, I was working on a project with two local mortgage companies that were part of banks, and they wanted us to review it and basically get a free consolidation report from the university. While I was doing that, they were intrigued by the fact that a college kid had owned several real estate pieces of real estate. They're like, "Why don't you write mortgages?" And I said, why? And they said, because you can make 50 basis points. I'm like, well, what's a basis point? And they said, well, if you write $100,000 mortgage, you make 500 bucks. I'm like, sign me up. So that's how I started. And at the time, um, mortgage rates were just coming down to the high tens, 10 and a half, 10, 10 and a quarter, that point. And the local banks offered a adjustable rate mortgage that started at like 5.9. And I did these spreadsheets that based upon the caps and the forecasts of the treasuries that you could take this loan, pay the same as a fixed rate, and as long as you didn't deviate from the payment, you would be 10, 15% deeper into your equity at any point in time, given the worst case scenario. And I wrote a lot of mortgages. Rates went up. Fast forward, Joe, the rates went up. And people said that I would be in early retirement. But I made the shift to going to find real estate agents. And at a young age, I realized that good service wasn't good enough, that I had to really be their partner. So just like the experience that we had together, I found ways to help people um, serve clients better and do more business. All the agents aspired to get to a more entrepreneurial model, which was the Remax model. And all the agents I worked with left their companies as they found success, moved to Remax. Fast forward 4 or 5 years later, I'm 26. The owner of that Remax decides to retire. I call her up and I buy the franchise.
Wow.
So here I am, the youngest guy. I'm like you. I was the youngest guy in the room and owning a pretty large Remax franchise. And, that's why I never had the urge to be a salesperson. I always helped the agents do better and did great doing that. I was like the real estate landlord, Joe, until 2007 when the market imploded. And my agents were like, can you help me? I'm drowning. And I said, sure. And I had to get my real estate license in order to help them with their clients. So that's where I started to use my license initially. And then I just, you know, elevated myself to the broker for the entire company.
One thing I love and I admire about you and your leadership is you practice what you preach. So when I came into Remax about like a year and I think maybe a couple months ago, um, I was in a rut. I was struggling, and here I am with the CEO of all these franchises, and he's like, you know what? Let's go on some appointments. Let's go on some listing appointments. Let's talk to clients. Why don't I show you how I do it? And I remember you told me, listen, you take me on 10 appointments, I'll get you 7 new clients. And I think I took you on a 6 or 7, and we signed 5 clients. And every time I had a question, every single time I had some feedback, I would go to you. You would help me, and little by little, my business took off. And every single time, I've always felt, and I think everybody in the office and everybody in the company feels the same sentiment that if they need help, they can go to Rob. Is that culture? Is that something that you created by design? Like, did you want to be so hands-on?
So that's a great question, by the way. And I want to just add maybe two clarifications. Number one is a lot of the leadership, even the stronger leadership, what they do is they wait for you to come and say, I have a problem, right? For me, I remember you were sitting in the back there and I'd say, how you doing? How many appointments did you set? How many did you go on? And then I would look at it and I'd say, the math's not adding up to me. You should have more listings signed, right?
100%.
So I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I kind of interloped in and said, I want to help before you came to me and said, I'm getting frustrated. Um, so I'm that way by nature, right? I love to help clients, and you're my client. And if I could help you help more sellers and buyers have integrity in the business and do a good job and earn a good living, that's what it's all about. Um, the hands-on piece, Joe, came from a frustration of the corporate infrastructure. Some corporate person that hadn't sold a house in 30 years is creating some policy and saying this would be a great idea. Why don't you do this? And I'm like, no, that's the worst idea ever. You haven't sold or a mortgage or a piece of real estate in 30 years, right? So I was like, if I ever get into a position of leadership, I'm going to make sure that I test the hypothesis and I practice what I preach, right? And it's even to the point like I know at least I think I had an impact on you even when we went door knocking in terms of how to ask the question, right?
Yeah, 100%. Your style of selling is so unique, but it's also so effective. We go to a listing appointment, fast forward 60 minutes, and I think Rob had the best close of all time. And I think I'll put it up against any close that anybody else wants to chime in with in the comments. So we fast forward 60 minutes, we get in agreement with the prospective clients we're talking to. And the seller wants to sign. The husband's kind of like, I'm not sure.
But Joe,
And
let me take it back just another step because I want to give you where my head was at. The husband was an attorney, right?
yes, yes.
And husband's an attorney. We're coming out of the real estate lawsuit settlement where you don't have to pay a commission, right? So there was that awkward tension, and now you can finish it here, Joe, because that's why my instincts kicked in.
There was an awkward tension right there, and but we're all kind of in agreement that we're gonna work together. They just don't want to sign the contract right this second. So what Rob does, because he wants some form of commitment, he says, "Hey, do you have a copy of the key?" And the seller is looking for it. She's looking for it, and funny enough, I have a copy of a key right here. She gives it to Rob. And then as she's giving it to Rob, the husband asks the wife, "Hey, so are you just gonna work with him?" And the wife is looking at him like, I guess so. I think we are. I think we are gonna work with him." And it was as easy as that. Why? Because you were in the frame of control. Yeah, just ask a simple question. They already knew. They decided that they wanted to work with them in our mind, but they needed an action, and that's exactly what that was.
I do think the husband was super analytical and wanted to have like three interviews, and I think they might have even had them set up. And we had future paced the transaction by saying like, so if you list this, do you need some help with decluttering and
The
things of that
dumpster,
nature?
the photography.
Correct. So we did the appropriate amount of work, and I just felt it was time to go for the close. And it wasn't like, here's the listing, will you sign it? So there was another way to get to that point. And I think that's instinct, and I think that it's going to grow your instinct, and someday you'll pay that forward to somebody else.
Yeah, I
Maybe
mean,
this maybe this podcast does that on steroids and gets into other people.
maybe, be assumptive, have the good feeling and just be confident. That's something that I learned from you really, really well. You're super confident in the way you ask questions. Like nobody's ever gonna tell you no. Um, so yeah, that's also, such a, it's also kind of like a mind. I don't even know how to say it because the mindset behind asking a question of that magnitude. Do you have a copy of the key? Like your mindset had to play a big part of it. What's a mindset principle for you that like you learned, let's say early on in your career, or maybe you learned last week? Like what's something that you really, stick to and want to stay with forever?
So my North Star is everybody's different, right? So you have to ask questions to find out what the solution is. Okay, you might say, Joe, everybody wants to sell their house for the most in the shortest period of time with the least amount of stress, but there's a different way to getting there. And the industry is, I think it's broken because we've been taught to show up and present. And I think the real magic is showing up, asking the right questions, and then selectively providing solutions to those questions that you ask, right? We get a, you'll get a kick out of this. I went on a listing in Hillside. So we called up, we got their names, we made this appointment, we go out there and walk through the house, build rapport, was not presenting. We had all the homework done. As I'm asking the questions, they go, Yeah, my daughter Tina, she's a sophomore. We're in February. You know, she wants to finish high school here before we move to Jackson. I'm like, oh, that's like 2 years, right? So what to do? So I I immediately pivoted to, what when you move, what's important to you, right? And what was important to them, if you know Hillside, it's a little bit congested and they have small yards. They're like, we want a backyard with a beautiful pool, and we want a bigger yard, right? And I'm like, is Tina here? Right? And they're like, yeah, Tina, come down, right? So she comes out of her room, and we're talking about where they want to go and why they want to have a pool in Jackson. And Tina was now part of the process. They had two properties they were following on Zillow, right? And I said, so if we can get your house sold here, I have Michael Falgaris can help you down here to buy the property, right? So you can't anticipate that, but the daughter was dead set against not finishing high school, but once we walked her through it, and I also had the story, my brother moved between sophomore and junior year, and he has two unique sets of friends that's helped him out tremendously in life. It's like he lived two lives. So anyway, that's how I pivoted to help get out of that, and they actually did sign that day, and they would probably tell you that it was the best decision they ever made.
Wow. Wow. And the way you got to that is by asking questions to benefit and serve them.
Right. I mean, I found that it wasn't the husband, it wasn't the wife, that they were trying to not upset the daughter. And then when I brought the daughter into the process, right, then I had cohesiveness to close the transaction. But you can't like that's a big if-then scenario that takes a little bit of intuition and insight. Um, but I do believe that they were better off, and I just needed to find out the way to get to that point. And if you go to, 100 Days to Greatness, or you go to any traditional real estate company's training, they teach you how to prepare for a listing presentation, they call it, right? And I think if I go on a listing presentation with you, it has an adverse mindset to me because I'm not presenting, okay? It's a
It's a
conversation.
conversation. Yeah. So what helped you shape your sales ability? Like, you were selling mortgages, then you had the opportunity to be a broker. Um, what books were you reading? Did you have any mentors? Did you have any coaches? Or
In the lending business, I've had some mentors that reinforce my values. And, in the lending business, there's some um, less than honorable people, and there's a temptation. And, I surrounded myself with people of similar moral integrity that reinforced what I was all about. And in that industry, we used to say there's no transaction worth your reputation. And I think it's probably even equally as relevant in our industry because, instead of like telling somebody they qualify for more than they do and not delivering, which I never did, that's like telling somebody their house is worth more and it expires, or you eventually sell it, but the customer is probably not satisfied with the experience. Okay. You asked a lot of questions there for me to unpack. Another question another piece I want to put into that is, what books do I read and who do I follow? I'd say probably the first book that was a real influence on me were the Tony Robbins books that he wrote. But I was very, very intrigued by Think and Grow Rich and read that many, many times. I'm an insatiable student of learning. Okay, so I watch a lot of other industry professionals, and a lot of times I'm like, I don't like that, I don't like that, but I may just pick up one or two things, right? And I picked up a line that you probably haven't heard because this was after our journey going out there together. But this line is exemplifies what we do. We talk about what our fee is, it's 2.5, three, 3.5, whatever our fee is, right? Hey, Joe, my fee is 3.5% for the services I do. And I just want to let you know, at the end of the experience, you're probably going to come and say, that was an amazing experience. I want to give you a bonus, but don't worry, I'm not going to take it.
Don't worry, I'm not gonna take it. Oh man, that I'm gonna use that today in my listing conversation.
Right? But that's the reality of who I am, right? In other words, like I'm going to give you 10% service, I'm only going to charge you 6%, whatever that is. And people don't remember what they paid. They remember the way you made them feel and they remember the experience, right?
And
If you,
100%,
if,
and it also goes back to your integrity and the people you surrounded yourself back all the way, when you were selling mortgages. And that's
yep,
something that it seems like and it sounds like it stayed true throughout your whole entire career. Because you're right, you're gonna give somebody a 10% service, but you're only charging them 6%. And what matters most to you, and I know that firsthand, is the service. It's not about the commission check. It's not about how much deals can an agent bring for you, but it's about the relationship you created and how you continue to grow it. Because again, you said it best. It's not what they do, what you do for them. It's how you made them feel.
right. And everybody's always making choices, right? And I think if you study, our industry, right? This is what I've seen for years. Seen great agents, Joe, go out and they know their market stone cold. They tell you your house is worth 800,000. Okay. And what does a typical seller that you never even met normally say?
My house is worth more.
If my house is worth nine, right?
Yeah.
And if they say their house is worth nine, right? But would it be reasonable if I told you from brokering, tens of thousands of transactions that most agents will come out of that listing appointment either at 900 or 850,
Yes. That's
but
yeah.
not at 800?
100%.
And the reason being is and this is Chet Holmes, not my favorite book, but it was a good book, The Ultimate Sales Machine. He had talks about in that book about buying behavior, and he said when he was a waiter or a server in a restaurant, they had a $8 bottle of wine, a $45 bottle of wine, and a $19 bottle of wine. And he said almost everybody bought the $19 bottle of wine. Nobody wanted to be cheap on a Friday night date, and nobody wanted to break the bank or bust the credit card. So they migrated towards the middle. And I had an aha moment when he talked about that. And I said, that's exactly what happens in real estate. And I said, I need to redefine the parameters. So I said, you know, and it's also important how I said, Joe, if we decide to work together when I'm in your dining room table, there are three ways that you can introduce your home to the market. And the first way is the market value. And this is akin to what an appraiser would assess your property if you gave them $1,000. Okay. That doesn't mean it's what your house is going to sell for, but it's a benchmark. Okay. There's the aspirational or lottery price where you price it above market with the intent of negotiating down. Okay. And the third option is to price it event style or auction style, where we introduce it to the market. We want to make a splash and get multiple bids from the beginning. And a lot of times I'll get a blank stare, right? And then I'll go, Joe, if we decide to work together, would you like to have some options? Everybody wants options, right? And I don't say if you choose me, I say we decide to work together. Because like early on in the conversation, you said there's some time when you get up and leave. Um, and then I say, would it be helpful to you, Joe, if I showed you how your fellow homeowners fared by choosing option A, B, or C, right? And my analytical mind believed by moving the market value to the middle told me that most people would pick that. I didn't think anybody would really pick the auction style. But when you study the behaviors in almost every market, the auction style makes more sense. And that's where I would use to introduce my own home for sale because you're going to get multiple bids and a lot of attention.
So you don't get a lot of people at auction. You get a lot of people at market.
No, I get a lot of people that I thought because of the Chet Holmes analogy that everybody moved to the safe middle opportunity, that was where they would go. So that's why I designed the three options. But when I shared with them how they performed, you know, there's I can't remember when we took an overpriced listing when I was co-piloting an appointment, right? And I would say that there is the majority of them are slightly below market, and there's a fair amount that go with auction style where they maybe price it 3 to 8% below the market just to create a frenzy. Um, so my strategy actually outperformed my logic, right? Because the quick sales always produce a better outcome. When you get somebody that's resisting, right? And they say, and I'm sure you've heard this, Joe, probably multiple times. Hey, I get it, 800 is where it's at, but can I just try 850? It would make my wife and I happy, right? And
Yep.
so if you did list it at 850 and you pick the right agent, whether it's me or somebody else, I always try to, not make it personal. Me or somebody else, you pick the agent that's got all the marketing negotiating skills. They introduce your home to the market, they launch it at 850 and you don't get an offer. How long are you going to wait, Joe, before you adjust the price? And I find most of the time it's, a week, 2 weeks, longest is 30 days, right? And then I say, Joe, in 14 days, we lower the price to 799 or 800. Somebody comes and sees the property. How do you think they're going to go about making an offer?
Well, I think that they're gonna be thinking that maybe there's something wrong with it if they drop the price in 14 days.
And if I showed you a house for 799 that was 850 2 weeks ago, and you wanted to make an offer, how would you approach it? Right? I asked them that question, and then they solved the problem for me, right? They're like, oh, well, we would try to take advantage. We think that they're starting to get desperate. So we're going to give them an offer of lower or significantly lower. So they basically talk themselves out of their bad bias to overprice it, right? Ask more, get less. Okay.
Incredible.
And
Incredible.
I want to give credit. I think this might be a Mike Ferry, or it might be somebody else, but they said homeowners don't argue with their own words. And if you ask a question where they tell you that that's a bad idea, they don't argue with it, right? But
Yeah.
if I tell you, Joe, if you price it too much, too high, we're gonna have to lower it. And then once we lower it, we're gonna get ultimately a lower price. You might try to challenge me on that.
100%. And the reason why is because me and you are salespeople. And what do consumers think about salesmen and saleswomen? They think that salesmen have a perceived bias. So if we tell them something, we're gonna gain something out of it. But people never believe what you tell them, but they will always believe what they tell themselves.
I just learned something from you, Joe, which is, although we're salespeople, we're different from a car salesperson because we have a fiduciary duty to you. So if it's okay, if you wanted to make the wrong decision, in my opinion, and I'm not saying I'm always right, but I just want to have permission to say, I might not be the right person, right? Because the power of loss is very strong.
And
So
what you just displayed right there is the law of detachment. The reason why is because you have an abundance mindset where, listen, I mean, you could make the decision yes or no either way. Listen, I wish you the best, but maybe I'm not the agent for you. And I guess I'm curious though, how has abundance? I mean, you're a savant in sales. You're an incredible leader. How has abundance helped you in your life? Like that mindset, that principle.
so the um, turning point for me with this was in 2007 when I saw agents struggling, losing their homes. It was just a really challenging time, right? I would go and say, Joe, what can I do to help you, right? And there were agents that would say, hey, Rob, I want you to help me, but don't share it with anybody else, right? Because I'm doing something secret, right? It would usually be they're doing some piece of mail. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're doing mail. But my mindset was, look, Joe, if I help you, the only caveat I have is that I'm going to take whatever we learn together and I'm going to share it with everybody I can help. And what is good for you is that you're getting the knowledge from everybody else's struggles. It's being funneled through me. So that's the abundance mindset. That's why my YouTube channel is called Abundance in Real Estate. It's not scarcity,
Not scarcity mindset.
right? Because, even if you're like, we have some agents that dominate. They're like, two agents are more than double their next competitor in their defined market, their municipality, right? But the highest market share is like 11 and a half. That means that there's 88.5% in that town that they don't have, right? So there's no scarcity.
100%.
Right?
And with with all that being said, I guess I'm curious. There's a lot of agents that you know this business very well, probably better than most because you've been in the business industry for so long. There's a lot of highs, there's a lot of lows. What do you tell your agents when they are in that, in that valley, the valley of despair, like how everybody calls it?
I call it porpoising, like you ups and downs, right? You're if you do all the right activities, you don't worry about the short term wins and losses because you know it's going to be there, right? When I was in lending, I could care less what the interest rates did because everybody else was in the same playing field, right? And here's another experience that I'm going to share with you, which is there was a agent that had a run in, and this was back 10, 15 years ago when we had just changed from uh, our duty was to the seller because they paid the commission to buyer's agency, right? And I'll say the gentleman's first name, Tommy, and his broker. So Tommy was way off base, right? And I had to call his broker, and his broker said this to me, which I'll never forget. Tommy was probably in his 70s. She goes, Rob, Tommy, he's a good boy, been with me for 40 years. And I'm like, really? And she goes, you know what the problem with Tommy is? I'm like, no, tell me what the problem with Tommy is. He's repeated the first year 40 times.
He's repeated the first year 40 times. Oh my
Right.
God.
Right. But he kept doing the same thing. He did like every year I'm better, Joe. Every year you should be better, right? You should be better able to help your clients. You should be better enabled to solve these problems. So even if the market shrinks, you're a year further in the business, unless your name is Tommy and you're repeating the year
Unless you're
over and
doing the
over
same
again.
thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Yeah.
Right. But you see that in this business, Joe. And I think that that interaction with me left a really lasting impression because some people can be in the business for 5 years and have 25 years of experience. Other can be in the business for 10 years and still have the mindset of their first year in the business because they keep repeating. They don't build upon their experience. And my North Star is always trying to figure out how to help the agent help the client, right? And then the money follows.
Yeah.
Okay. If
100%.
you if you can look through me and when I'm at your house or I'm co-piloting a listing appointment with you or any of your peers, Joe, like if my mind could speak silently, it would be like, look, Joe, if you give me this listing and you never refer me and you don't say I did a wow job, either I did something wrong or um, you're not the person that recognizes the value. And I'm not here just to make one commission. I'm here to build a relationship and I want to deliver that extra level of service so you go out of your way to refer me, right? I think, mediocre bad service, people will tell 10 people. If you do a great job, you know, traditional wisdom says they may tell one person, right? I want to do that job where they want to tell 20 people what a great job I did. And not because I'm begging them, but because they see the product, they see what we delivered.
The level of dedication, service, service, service. So I guess last question for you here. You went from one franchise all the way up to around 58. God willing, if these 14 close.
Yep.
What's one really big advice that you would tell to any entrepreneur that's watching this, that wants to grow their business at the level that you have?
Don't reinvent the wheel, find a mentor, right? If somebody came to me and said, hey, can you tell me, what mistakes you made that I could avoid? I'm more than willing to share the mistakes. As a matter of fact, I actually have in the company, um, uh, you met Rob Durso, right?
Yeah.
So Rob Durso was going to open up his own office, and Bobby Golden, who's a good friend of his, said we'd love to have him here, but his goal was to buy the brokerage he was in. That wasn't working out, and he wanted to be a broker owner. So I said, look, I know you respect him, have him come in here, and I just want, and authentically, Joe, I'm telling you this from the bottom of my heart. My goal was not to recruit him. I'm like, when you open up, you just call me. I'll give you my contacts. I'll tell you all the mistakes I did. They cost me tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars of mistakes over the years. I'll give them all to you for free, right? And he said to me, he went back and told Bobby, he's like, do you think like we could maybe open a team office together? Because I don't think I want to go through all that. But my intention was not to convince him. If I was trying to sell him to come to Remax Select, he probably would have never
He
came.
would have never came. Yeah.
But I was there. I was there. I want to help you because I made a lot of mistakes, and I'll share with you all the ones I did, and I'm still here. And if that doesn't, end this great interview, I don't know what will. But I was just being of value. I was being of service, and then it wound up helping me. Who would have figured? In Think and Grow Rich, he talks about give more than what you're paid for, right? And then you get paid for what you deliver. But if you try to reverse it, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. You have to solve the problem first without any expectations, without any, want or yearn for it back, and then it will come back to you tenfold. That's karma.
Yep, and I'll give you this last piece for some of the newer people in the business. Like if you know, your business model is you charge 3%, right? And if somebody says, "Hey, can you give me a discount to 2%?" Right? That's probably your entire margin that you just gave away, right? Because you have expenses and your time, so your entire margin is gone. So you now have a losing business proposition, in my opinion. And what happens is you may deliver subpar service, and then you just compromise the whole integrity of your business model. So look at your commission is negotiable, but like you have to have a business model. You have to know what you're willing to do. And I found if you can demonstrate your value, that you need to earn what you're worth to be sustainable in the business and deliver the service that you want. And the people who deliver very high service are paid very well, and the people who don't struggle.
Incredible. Service, service, service. You guys heard it here first from Rob Lazar. He has 60 Remaxes under his belt. I think you should listen to him. Maybe listen to a thing or two he said this podcast, right, Rob?
You could always reach out to me. Even if you're not here, I'll help you out because the universe will pay you back, and it just feels good to make a difference.
100%. All right. Thanks so much, Rob. All right. Let me
Take care.